Let's speak to Nick Spicer, our correspondent in Berlin. Hello to you, Nick. For some people, those words might sound remarkable. We've been hearing Olaf Scholz talk about ramping up the military, though, throughout the year. Tell us more about what he said.
Well, those are pretty much the highlights, identifying, of course, Russia as the biggest threat to NATO, saying that he wanted Germany to become the most militarily capable country in Europe and the cornerstone of European defense. Let's just keep in mind what the German army is like right now. In the Chancellor's words, he said, look, it's not enough to drill wells. It's not enough to be vaccinating people during a pandemic. That's all well and fine, but you are here to defend freedom. And of course, the German military for 70 years has been extremely reluctant as regards the use of force, always the last to deploy in NATO missions or always insisting that there be a UN mandate because of the history and the legacy of the Second World War and the shame of using military force. But all that changed, of course, when Russia invaded Ukraine and Olaf Scholz, who was a social democratic chancellor, made an historic speech in the Bundestag just days after, devoting $100 billion in military spending, saying that Germany needed to take on new military responsibilities and promising to spend 2% of GDP on defense spending as the NATO guidelines require.
So more responsibilities, more capacity, but will they use it?
This is really the big question. I mean, I think we won't see Germany going it alone, for instance, launching expeditions as, for instance, France and the United Kingdom have done in Africa, for example. I think the public opinion here simply won't accept Germany acting outside of NATO or outside of a UN mandate. And there will be challenges, I think, inside Germany as regards this new policy, this new direction. You have people who are pacifist by nature. You have, a generations of school children brought up learning never again, this must never again happen, the Second World War. Of course, the war crimes that Russia has perpetrated in Ukraine has allowed a big chunk of public opinion to shift behind this new, somewhat aggressive military policy, certainly a policy of supporting Ukraine as regards weapons deliveries. The really interesting thing, I think, domestically, is that this message is coming from a social democratic chancellor. Usually, these are the Ostpolitik guys. These are the people who talk to Moscow, who think we can just sort of change the way Moscow is behaving through trade. All of that is over now. We have a social democratic chancellor who's basically acting like a Christian democratic chancellor, sort of a pro-American Atlanticist chancellor. So it looks like overall public opinion in Germany, I think, will support this change in direction when you have the party that is perhaps the most pacifist by nature lining up for a stronger military.
All right, Nick, thank you very much. Nick Spicer reporting from Berlin.